CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Radio Network and the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining me on CFL Talk is Mr. CFL Talk. Um, uh, uh, um, when are you going to slap me in the face so I'll remember?
I was wondering when that was gonna happen. Yeah, it
Oh,
was right off the hop. Ooh. You know, at times when we slap each other, it's because of love, right? You know, it's a loving way that we slap each other. We're not.
unless it's a backhanded slap.
That's fair. That's so true. I've, I've
Unless
I've
it's a
heard the
backhand.
stories. I don't think I've ever really gotten one. Like, I'm not old, but like I'm not young, but I'm not old either. Like I'm in that in between where I didn't really. I knew it happened, but I never really experienced it to the degree that maybe you did.
No, I didn't. Well, it's another story for another day and another program. Um, okay, so here it is. The combine just happened. Um, I had some issues getting involved with the combine. I don't mind admitting it. Um, it's one of those things. And anyway, so the combine is kind of a big deal. The draft's going to happen, on May 3rd. The free agency situation will be pretty dry by then, right? So I always believe that the combine is impacted by free agency in the sense that the whole thing is that as far as the combine's concerned in the Canadian Football League, the players that you sign, you have to sign them for a lot of money. And if you're going to sign them for a lot of money, you want to make sure that they're ready to play. Which is why the risk and reward of drafting somebody who could be drafted by the NFL becomes a bit of an issue. So you've got financial pressure to pick a player that can join your lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, you're putting yourself in the untenable situation where they get drafted by an NFL team and they go to the NFL. You don't know how long it'll take, but they probably will come back, more often than not. A lot don't come back, but some do, and those some, when they come back, are free agents. So um, it's a tough situation when Canadian teams have the draft, right? So this year, uh, as is progressing, you're not in a situation here where you're just drafting offensive linemen.
Yeah, and I think maybe the benefit for CFL teams this year is that the NFL draft is April 28th to the 30th, and the CFL draft, I know you have all the dates there, is May 3rd. So
Right.
at least knowing that in that time, a player that you were picking, you'll understand if whether they've been drafted. The other thing is whether or not they're undrafted signing, or if they're going to get a futures contract or an invite to training camp. Like those are things that hopefully teams can kind of sort out. But that's also why when you look at projections and rankings, they pretty much, if a player has NFL aspirations, they're not going to be ranked as high, because why would a team want to take a player that might not play with them in the first round? Like, you can't, in this day and age of the CFL, where the salary cap is becoming more and more, teams really have to be, cognizant of the dollars in and dollars out. They got to start using some of these earlier picks to get players that can play right away. And not just, as you said, offensive line. We're now seeing receivers. I've heard defensive back is a really strong position this year. Like, you're going to start seeing, I think, more and more players in skilled positions getting picked, because in the CFL, you need to find some of these younger, affordable talent. I hate saying cheap because everyone says, "Oh, they're cheap talent." Well, they're not cheap. They're decent talent. It's just they're more affordable. They're the bargain talent, and if that's even, I don't know if that's worse than saying cheap, but more affordable for teams to manage.
Well, put it this way, David. there have been years when teams have had two first round draft picks and more than willing to get rid of one,
Yep.
because if they draft them in the first round, they have to pay them.
Oh
It's
yeah.
different. It's different than when they get drafted in the second round. So I've seen where teams have, traded away a first round draft pick. So
And you know what? They'll trade a first round draft pick also to get a player that maybe is more CFL ready. Get a player that's going to be able to come in and be be something for your team. Where a draft pick, there's still a lot of unknowns. You know, especially the last few years because there's been just so little football being played that you really can't gauge too much on how the players are on the field. You're judging a lot of it also by what they're doing in these, different drills that you're running and, the interviews you're doing. So that's something, teams have to be very observant about.
totally. When it comes to the draft, it's important that, well, it's obvious that the work that is done. You know, Marshall Ferguson, for example, CFL.ca. If you want to know anything about the draft, just check him out, and he'll tell you everything you want to know about the draft. What I believe is clear is that the players now that are coming at the draft, the Canadian draft, they're becoming more knowledgeable, understanding what it takes, and they're beginning to understand what they have to do to impress. They're showing up with more uh, preparedness on what to say and how to react to scores that they have. You see it from when you have the regional drafts, and then those regional drafts yield extra opportunities for players who weren't originally for the main draft to get a chance to move to the main draft. So there's competition from beginning to end for these Canadian football players, and they, I think, are up for the challenge. And you know how they perform here is important. And then you have the ones that are so ahead of everybody else that they don't even bother coming to the combine. So it's it's so complicated, and it's so counterintuitive so many times. There's on one, like we talked about at the beginning, you want to draft the best player available, but if you draft them, you probably won't get to use them. And the same thing's true for players when they come to the draft. They're all really ready to play and to be a part of this, and all they're looking for is an opportunity. And if the team can find a guy that can plug and play, you know, obviously special teams is the first thing that these players are going to be asked to do. And their willingness, and you hear it almost to a man, they all talk about, yeah, I'll be on I'll be on special teams. That's an important function of a Canadian player in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, and you're seeing with the teams that are really contending and competing, they have the best Canadians. That's it's no longer I feel like it's no longer just about who you're getting in free agency, who you're able to get, as an American player. I think it all comes down to who are your better Canadian players. And now we're seeing teams like I think BC, Toronto, try to get those players that play ratio breaking, positions so that you can start maybe an American on the offensive line. That seems to be a theme for this year. The BC Lions kind of talked about this by having, two Canadian quarterbacks. Now guess what? We can now play an American on the offensive line, where in the past usually that's been a Canadian dominant position. But because now we're seeing Canadians really step in at different positions, you can bring in that American talent and play those other spots that generally maybe they're a little bit better at.
Yeah, it's the opposite now, as it used to be. In back in the day, you had your Canadians. The best job for you to do to have a Canadian, fulfill or to fill is the offensive line. So let's get it. Who are the best guys that can play offensive line? We've got the system in place to teach them how to play offensive line, and there you go, and you're off and running. Whereas now, we have MVPs that are Canadian. We have now in BC, they're going to, like you said, they're going to go with two Canadian quarterbacks. They have another guy that's a good shot to be an American quarterback. Barrett, he could be a guy that's there, but we'll see about that. The point being that the Canadian players now, they're good at a lot of different positions, and I think it's really important.
No, I know. I definitely do think it's important. And, I like what worked 10 years ago in the CFL, not necessarily working in, in these times. I feel like this is the things you got to adapt with as, things, as you're, and look, I always say that if you get more recognizable Canadian names, people really, people really gravitate to say, let's cheer for the local product. And, there's a bit of a, Canadians will always root for those guys that are coming from Canadian universities. It's the nostalgia factor, and it's really that's what makes the CFL the CFL. Everyone likes to support that Canadian content.
Yeah, they do in fact bring their own fan base with them. Because family and friends, uh, they surround these Canadian players. It's a real family affair when it comes to when you play for a Canadian team, especially today, because they try as hard as they can, the teams and the players, to try and end up near home. Well, we got a couple of topics we want to talk about. One of them has to do with rent and stuff, which speaks to that area. So, are they drafting more players that are from their area, or are they drafting players from somewhere else? We've When we drain this talk about the draft, we'll talk about rent in Toronto and BC, and the cost of players for players to live in the cities that they're playing in.
Yeah, we know that in certain areas of this country, it is cheaper to live than in other areas of this country. Frank, you and I both live in the GTA or close to the GTA. I have a relative who lives out in PEI, Prince Edward Island, and I know another person who's looking for a place out in New Brunswick. When I'm seeing the prices there versus what's happening in Toronto, I can sort of understand why the general manager of the Toronto Argonauts, Pinball Clemens, comes out and says, we've kind of brought it up to the CFL that there's a bit of a disparity among the clubs when it comes to affordable housing for players. Because in every CFL contract, or most CFL contracts, they actually put in like rent, like housing as part of the contract. Because I don't know if you've noticed, it's really hard to find livable situations, especially in Toronto. Like you see a lot of like a
Well,
lot.
let's put it in perspective, David, just to
Yeah, go
clarify,
ahead.
okay? Because we're talking about comparing the rent in Regina as opposed to Toronto. We're talking about comparing the rent in Ottawa as opposed to BC. We're talking about the rent as in Winnipeg as opposed to Montreal. So, they're even though they're all fair-sized cities, the bigger cities in Canada, the rent is different in those places. So, to help people understand, it's all about math, right? You have your 43 players, you have your local players, which will be a handful, and the most of the Americans don't live up here, so they have to figure out where to live,
Yep.
and the rent difference would be in Toronto compared to a place like Regina could be twice as much in rent. That twice as much comes out of the team's pocket, the player's pocket, but the team as well, because the team is the one that part of the contract is to provide places for them to live.
Will provide them with the money for them to find a place to live. And
Right.
in the Argos case, I know they've actually hired people to help the players find places to live because I don't know if like it's really hard. Not only do you need to find somewhere to live, we need to find somewhere to live where it's feasible to get to practice, right? Because the Argos practice at at Lamport Stadium, which is right near BMO Field, which is in the exhibition grounds. It's a very high in demand area, Liberty Village. I know that it's not as bad over there because, it's a younger area, a lot of younger people work there, so the rent isn't too bad. But you're trying to get a whole football team or a good number of them, and it's worse so for the practice roster because they especially do not make a lot when it comes to salary. Like it's very minimal, and it's very tough for them. And this is something I think doesn't get talked about enough. Actually, it was Danny Austin who kind of asked about it or kind of brought it up. And I think it's something that needs to be really examined by the CFL, because the last thing you want is for this a new league to come in and take away from your talent pool, because not only will the XFL, I'm going to bring the XFL into this, but not only will they be paying players in American, which I don't know if you notice is worth more than Canadian dollars, but some of these cities in the states where the players would be playing are more livable. And for an American player, they don't have to worry about the taxes, as you mentioned. Like these are things that now more so than ever are becoming a very real, consideration for players when it comes to deciding how to work. We almost lost James Wilder Jr. from the CFL for that very reason. And then it all seemed to work out because he's a good player and he got paid what good players get paid. And that seemed to work out for him. But for some, it's not that simple.
Rent is something that, it sounds so, because of, I think, because people think of athletes as making a ton of money. Most people do know that in the CFL that the players don't make a ton of money. Um, I think the thing to understand is that by virtue of how much they earn, and how much if we break it down to the teams, how much the teams pay in that regard, are they getting a reasonable return on what they're paying? And if it's all part of the cap, and the cap basically gets eaten at a rate much higher for, let's say, Toronto, who feel it's not fair that their players, you know, need to pay this much as opposed to somebody in Regina who doesn't pay that much. It's a definite issue when you're talking about thousands of dollars can make a difference. And we all know how much rent is in Toronto. Just to give you an idea, um, the house next door. I have a family member that owns a house, and it's a semi-detached house, and they're renting the house. It's basically a one, two, three-bedroom house, right? Back split, 3,500 $3,500 a month rent. Now, if you're in Regina and you hear me say that, you'll understand a little closer as to what it is, the problem, the issue. So, where you can in Regina for $1,200 a month, you can, for a third of that, you can rent in Regina. So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you those numbers are 100% right, but I think the theme is right. And I think that's enough, is that you understand that, and then that money comes out of the team when you're only paying the guys that you're referring to, the guys in the practice roster, you're paying them 50 grand, right? Because that's what it comes down to,
If that.
right? And 50 grand, an extra 18,000 dollars a year rent with a guy you're paying 50 grand. Now you're starting to understand, maybe if you're paying attention now, you're beginning to understand the kind of pencil that has to be sharp. There's literally no lead left in the pencil.
Yeah, and look, they make 50,000, but they're not that's not 50,000 they take home because there's taxes that come with
There you
that,
go.
right? And so that's really just it's an issue that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon, because I don't know about you, rent is not going down in Toronto,
No.
rent is not going down in BC. So one of two things has to happen. The CFL needs to allow teams to provide more for housing, or you give a percentage, so you're not putting a specific dollar figure on it. Or this is a kind of an issue that hockey teams now talk about with certain teams that don't have state tax versus teams that do have state tax. Well, guess what? You think a player's worth about, let's say, $6 or $7 million a season? No, really, they're going to be worth $8 to $9 million to you because they can go and get that full money in another place, and you're kind of the victim of the situation that's out of your control. So you have to figure out ways to kind of go around that. And I think this is something the CFL is going to have to figure out because it's really going to be a deterrent for a lot of, I think, a lot of players going forward.
Well, for example, if you're paid for a year and you can convince the team to pay you 100% in bonuses, your contract ends up guaranteed. Your tax rate's a lot lower too. That's why Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, the whole bunch of them. That's why when they got paid in a bonus structure in advance and in a bonus structure because that's the best taxable situation. So what that means is the only reason I'm bringing that up is teams have to work with the players to make sure the players want to come to their team, and money is the first and most important. I don't care what anybody. I want to pay for Toronto Police. Don't. Never mind. We know the truth. For example, Mitch Marner said, "I want to be a Maple Leaf," and then he put himself out there, and he was looking for an offer sheet. When he didn't get what he wanted from the Leafs, so he was signing an offer sheet. So, to get the best deal he could get, and Austin Matthews, and they basically almost got all their money up front. But because they did that, they didn't pay the same kind of tax rate they would have if they got it as a salary. So, this is what the CFL does. And the irony is, the reason I'm mentioning it is because in the CFL, the league is saying, we don't want you doing that anymore. And they've capped how much you can give players in bonuses for that reason. So, it's a tough situation. The dollars are not that big in the Canadian Football League, so rent is a serious problem for a team that is paying far much more for rent than other teams.
Yeah, because as soon as a player gets paid a bonus in the CFL and that player gets traded or moved or cut, the CFL team's on the hook for that bonus. They can't make that go away. And when the cap is so minimal, that's something that every team has to worry about. So that's why, as you said, the CFL teams aren't handing out these big bonuses to certain players because frankly they just can't afford to. And for players, that's an issue. They actually rely on that guaranteed money
It's one
because
of the ways to get guaranteed money. It's
yeah, like
pretty much the
that's
only way.
right. Signing bonus, roster bonus, workout bonus. Like, there's a few ways you can try to make sure you get that money up front as much as you can without a team saying, you're making X amount too much for us. We're gonna have to cut you before you're due all this money.
Well, look what the Argos had to do. They had to
Yeah.
release Campbell, a
Yep.
great player in the community. Everything about him fantastic. Regina's really lucky to end up with him. And,
And I
Chris
yeah,
Jones knows who he is.
and Pinball kind of alluded to this that it wasn't for Jamal Campbell. Part of it, he wanted to make it clear that it wasn't just salary related, although we can kind of tell that it was there was a good chance that a good part of that was due to salary because he was highly paid for his position because he's one of the better or one of the longer reigning right tackles for the Argos. So that was part of it. I also think that they were gonna give it the opportunity to somebody who's not making as much, but also not only just a player not making a lot, but also an American.
Yep. That's, it's important that we understand that it's a business, and the players don't just they don't just get paid. They're involved in the realization that they're in a business, and it's kind of you can sense it sometimes with players is that right now with coming out of the pandemic and stuff that I'm sure the players, I know what we saw at the Grey Cup was the excitement of making it there. Those players got a chance to play in the Grey Cup. Um, we'll see how this season goes now that the excuse of not playing a full season, the ability for the teams to be able to meet their budgets, um, the league being able to do what it needs to do in regards to promoting the league, the interest to see what kind of interest the fans are going to have in following the Canadian Football League. It's going to be a tough. It's going to be a lot of hard work to really um, get this going again. And when we talk about the draft, I can go back to that a little bit. Is there something the CFL could have done more about this? I know you have some views on the draft and how is there anything stopping them making it a must see program? I don't know.
I mean, I just think I look at how other leagues do it. The draft is a huge deal. I continually think the CFL underestimates, like, when you're looking for engagement from fans during your off season when there's no game action going on, the draft, the combine, free agency, these are ways you can keep your fans engaged on your league when it's kind of at the not the fully dormant stage. Right now, I feel like the CFL, it kind of goes from you're sleeping to you're getting water thrown on your face and you have to wake up all of a sudden. Like, it's too extreme for I feel for fans right now. Like, there should be a lot more talk. I mean, CFL.ca did a good job covering the actual combine, because they had people there covering it, but where was everybody else, right? I couldn't go because I had other obligations, but where are your other outlets? Where is TSN? Where are the other media networks that are covering the sport? Why aren't they there? It's they had it in Toronto, which is usually more accessible for most of the national mainstream media. They did it at a hotel, which I can get. It's, usually you're not required. I also just think, why aren't you doing it at a local stadium or somewhere where fans feel like they can kind of get involved and watch, and it'd be you can make it a bigger thing for everybody to get involved with. And I just think they just play this down way too much. They could do so much more with this and keep the engagement with the fans. I guarantee if they do a survey of what if I ever saw the CFL survey on it things I would like to see the league improve. Number one for me would be what's the engagement, not just during the season, but when the season isn't happening. That's always been a thing I talked about. I feel like the CFL just does not do enough to keep it all engaged. Where's the draft being held? Right? Where's the draft being held? Are there going to be any events happening? What's the coverage going to be like? I haven't heard anything. Like, CFL.ca has their roundup of everything that's happening. I haven't heard much about where can I watch the draft? How can I watch the draft? All those things, nothing. And I guarantee everybody knows when the NFL draft is. Everybody knows where they can watch the NFL draft, even the NHL draft, the MLB draft, every league. The draft is such a vital thing for the league. It's not overlooked. I'm not saying the CFL totally overlooks it because they put together a pretty decent event from those I talked about that went there, but they were also saying that it could have been a lot better, and it should be a lot better.
Yeah, I guess organizing the people that'll cover the event. Did they do a good job making sure everybody available that's interested in the Canadian Football League is aware it's going to happen, whether it be bloggers, video streamers, any, if it isn't TSN, if it isn't CBC, if it isn't Gold. I mean, everybody who's ever covered the CFL, were they all aware that there were things going on? The availabilities, was everybody involved in the availabilities? Because with the availabilities come recording of interviews. Those interviews mention the draft and mention the CFLs coming back. They're great primers for getting people interested in the game. Has the CFL done a good job of making sure that they get the word out there? Those are the challenges. I'm not here to judge because I'm not going to bother judging. I'm just saying, what it comes down to is are are the is the spider web of information passers, you know, providers, were they all ready and available to spread the news of the Canadian Football League? I'm like I said, I'm not going to judge. So and if you're aware of it and then you do something and you promote them, but you have to the people who are here to pass the news around, they have to be informed and they have to be kept in the loop. I'm not sure that's the case. The Canadian Football League. I say it with a little bit of disappointment. We all sit here waiting for the season to start, but it's not just about the season starting. It's about getting the excitement going, generating, the excitement that we hold, that excitement that we all felt when the free agency kicked in and all these great players switch teams and the opportunity there to, capture lightning in a bottle, pass on the interest, the real interest, because, you know, I can go out there, David, and I can say Joe Willie of Boise State has signed with the Toronto Argonauts. Okay, that's great. You can mention that. But when you have, people like we've seen moving, in Toronto, for example, Andrew Harris, there's a guy that should be, there should be more than 15, 20 seconds on, you know, in the media,
Yeah.
with the Argos webpage, the CFL webpage, there should be more about those guys. There should be more talk about them. There should be somehow interviewing them and sharing the excitement I know I saw with them when they came to Toronto. The excitement that's there. You get a guy like Brandon, right? I mean, he comes to Toronto and from Hamilton. It's a soft landing. Is the only way I can describe it. That should be a hard landing, a hard, loud landing. This is a guy who was a Hamilton Tiger Cat. Now he's in Toronto, and he's been a destroyer of the Toronto Argonauts. No, now he's in Argo. This should be stuff that we're talking about, hearing at every corner that is willing to broadcast it. So I don't understand why it's happening this way, but I'm just going to, I guess, carry on doing what we do and use whatever information they give us and do the best we can with what we're given. And then, you know, I'm hoping that we generate some excitement here and we have some exciting news to generate and to pass along to the fans. That's what we're here for. But we can't invent the news. We can't do that.
No, and I also think I've been thinking long and hard about this. I also think this is a case where the CFL need if I'm there's a thing that the stigma about the CFL in these markets that it's been allowed to be ignored. One, it's been allowed to be ignored, and two, it's been okay that it's been ignored. Like that's the other issue. It's not just that the CFL has been ignored. Also, the CFL seems it's okay for it to be ignored. Like they should be wanting to change the narrative in Toronto, not just accept, you know what, it's
It
just
is what it
it
is.
is what it is, or oh, we're trying. Well, unfortunately, people don't really think you're trying because I constantly get fans seeing messages saying, "Why am I only seeing a few T-shirts at Real Sports, in
That's been
Toronto?"
a problem for a long time.
Right? Why is like why when the issue is that when the CFL itself isn't looked on in a big way, why isn't the CFL doing what it can to remove that you're not going to totally remove the stigma, but you can start to move the needle a little bit. And
Is it
then
is it because they don't really want to move information right now because there's nothing really going on, and maybe once the preseason starts, all the video of last year, like TSN will do, they'll start hyping the season coming up. Like, you've always said, and I don't disagree with you at all. I agree with you. In fact, there's no bridge between the Grey Cup to the next season.
No, no, there isn't. And I tell you this: people who cover the league for these outlets, they want to do it, but they don't get the
I thought
opportunity
free
to do it.
agency. I thought free agency was the opportunity to do that.
I thought so too, but it's coverage of sports has changed a lot. It's now more so than ever about what gets eyeballs. It's what gets eyeballs. It's what sells. What's going to bring in the sponsorship dollars. And until the CFL finds a way to get the monetary, when people say, "Ooh, the CFL's got X and Y as a partner," that's why some people wanted the XFL as a partner. You get something with Dwayne the Rock Johnson's name on it,
Mhm.
that sells. I'm telling you, like
You want proof? You want proof? I'll give you quick proof. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching an episode of Young Rock,
I was gonna bring that up, and he talked about the CFL.
Calgary Stampeders, and everybody was talking about it that knows the Canadian Football League, and other people were talking about it on media, and of course the internet, about what he played for in the Canadian Football League. You jump all over that, man. You jump all over it. But I don't know why he wasn't. I haven't seen, and maybe I'm just not following the CFL close enough. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, are
But I
you?
don't
Well,
understand why nobody talked to him about it directly. You know,
you
I,
want you want
I
another
mean,
one? The Super Bowl, the biggest sporting event in the United States every year. Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, two of the bigger Hollywood actors, were there. Did you know what Will Ferrell was wearing? I
yep,
think we talked about this.
yeah. Well, we
Wearing a
saw it.
BC Lions jersey in honor of his Canadian fellow
Roots.
Canadian
Yeah.
brother in there. And now I do know that the CFL. I mean, I know the TSN's had Ron Burgundy for curling.
Yes.
Have they done it for the for CFL? Don't think so. I will tell you this, Frank, and as somebody who's kept my eye on the curling scene, curling has become very popular. A lot of eyeballs on it. So guess what? Because there's a lot of eyeballs on it, there's more coverage on it.
Hmm.
Not
Well, it's international in scope now. It's in there competing with hockey and not quite basketball, but or soccer, not quite those two. Not hockey either, but it's creating its own little niche.
it is. And that's another thing the CFL just hasn't found. It's found its niche in certain places. But if in the big picture, in the them really wanting to expand their scope,
They're
haven't
doing it. They're doing it in curling, China, Japan.
yeah,
It used to be
Sweden,
Scotland, England, Canada,
Italy.
U.S., right? Sweden, even Italy
I
is
saw
getting
the
in there
Italians
now.
beat the Canadians in curling, and I was. It took me a few minutes to process that.
Well, especially knowing how your soccer team's done.
Oh, that's you were talking
Okay,
about slap in the face. That was
that
a
was
slap in the
if you
face.
wanna
One
know
of
what
the
a
biggest in the world as
backhanded
well.
slap feels like, that was a backhanded slap.
Oh
That
man,
wasn't that wasn't a palm slap, that was a knuckle slap. Um, yeah, well, we'll see. There is a lot that can be said. Like, right now, the combine, you know, Ferguson, it's important that the draft get the kind of attention. Hopefully, it will. In past years, they've had get-togethers with fans. They've had fans go to stadiums and be a part of the draft. We'll see if they do that this year. Hopefully, they will, because I know the fans look for any excuse to join their teams, and that's true in every CFL town.
mhm.
It's not, it's very powerful here in Toronto as well. People may find that hard to believe, but admittedly, the fan base here isn't as large in Toronto, but it's very dedicated and really passionate. And when it comes to events like that all you need are 500 people to make it a big deal. They can come up with 500 people and they'll make it a big deal. So, I look forward to that. Hopefully that'll happen. Maybe we'll get some word on it happening. In other news, well, the rock thing we mentioned, that the Canadian Football League, we see it all the time on in movies and TV shows. It's the football league they can show because you don't see the NFL. You
Yeah.
can't even see college teams now anymore. So the CFL gets a lot of airtime on TV shows in the US and stuff like that. And of course, the thing with The Rock, and that was good publicity for them. Other good publicity is Henry Burris being in the NFL coaching, then decides to come back and joins the BC squad. 10 days later, he's headed back to the NFL. You want to flesh out that story?
Yeah, that was kind of a weird one there. Now, I think part of it too is Henry Burris. Once you get down in the NFL and you make some good contacts, you're able to kind of move your way back and forth. We've seen it with Scott Milanovic. He was here, he went back down. Came back, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go back down." Like the ping ponging of it is, um, like when he was brought in the first by BC, he didn't really have a distinct role. It was offensive consultant, if I'm not mistaken. So this was a case where I think the Lions knew that this might not have been a long term thing, or they were not willing to put an official like label on it. Like we're not going to make we're making not making the relationship kind of, we're not solidifying it. We're going to allow you to try other things. And I mean, for him to get a role back in the NFL, you can't say no to that, because it looks good that if one day Henry Burris gets a prime NFL coaching job, it looks good that Marcus Brady is doing it. It looks good that Scott Milanovic is doing it. Like it's good when these coaches do it. When Mark Trestman went down to for the Chicago Bears out of all teams, right? It just means something. These are the sort of things that allow people to understand that the CFL isn't low rate when it comes to ability and talent. There's actually very good football minds in the CFL, and this is one way you can get on the map a little bit. So I don't mind this. I know it's probably sucks if you're a Lions fan. Thinking what Henry Burris could have done with those two young Canadian quarterbacks. Uh, let's just say there's other Henry Burris's out there. Hey, what's Ricky Ray doing right now? I know he's enjoying time with his family, but you don't think maybe someone like him wouldn't be a bad idea for them? Like, there's other players you can look at. Um, it would have been nice to see Henry Burris there, but I think it's also good that you see these these players, or sorry, someone like Henry Burris, really get a legitimate shot in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's important. And we've had, we always talk about the players, but coaches, they're important as well. And hopefully that he'll have some success there. We know that that's what he wants to do. The next story I'd like to talk to is they've confirmed that the Atlantic game will be happening, and it will be between the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Toronto Argonauts. And it will be a game that will be a home game for Toronto. I know a lot of fans that are not impressed with the fact, um, that the home game, they're losing a home game. That Argo fans are losing a home game. Um, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I mean, one team has to lose a home game out of it, because you're not going to do it for a preseason game. You have to do it for a home game. It would have been nice if they didn't do it to Toronto, but at the same time, you know, I don't think Toronto was hating the idea of giving up that football game to the CFL. And, they're probably getting something out of it, because no team is just going to give it up all willy nilly for nothing. Um, yeah, I don't mind. I know that the stadium that they're playing at, because I was kind of looking at the idea of, could I go there? What would the cost be? The stadium,
$50 a ticket.
how much?
$50 a
$50 a
ticket.
ticket, and
I just checked.
the capacity is only 3,000. Part of the reason is it's kind of looking, I'm like, this is not exactly an easy place to find a hotel. Like this is not a tourist attraction. This is they're going to Raymond Field, so that's for the Acadia University. It's a university field. It's
Mhm.
not exactly a tourist attraction by any means. So I can understand that. It'll be nice to see if they can fill. Now, I really do hope they can get 3,000 fans. Like, I don't. How many tickets are available, Frank? I don't know if you
I
saw.
I'm looking to see what, the game's on July 16th.
There's a lot of time to get it because they just
Okay.
confirmed this. This is not like they.
Yeah, and I'm wondering why, the Saskatchewan at Toronto, and then did it come up right? It comes Toronto at Ottawa. Okay,
Interesting.
so that's not good.
Like
So
that's what I'm wondering is at what point do they really start to push? Like, do they have any pack? They should be having travel packages. The CFL should
yeah, I
have been
don't
working with a travel agency because that's what a lot of leagues do now. You want to come and see your team on the road? Here's a travel package that's affordable for fans because we've worked out a deal with a travel company to get you there. The CFL has a partnership. I can't remember the airline now. I think it's Swoop actually was one of the is actually the airline. So like, is there a deal there where maybe fans can get if you're going to the game, here's a few dollars off your tickets or your airline tickets, or here's a hotel that's going to give a CFL rate. Things like that will make it more inviting for fans to do it. I know quite a few diehard fans have already said they've got their hotel booked and everything. That's not going to stop them, but I don't know. To go to Halifax in the summertime would be fantastic. I've heard it's great over there. So why not try to get more people
I don't
to want to come there?
yeah, no, I get you. Every time I do it, and I've done it everywhere you can. I've done it in the schedule. I've done it on the top bar. You scroll across, and I keep getting Toronto at Ottawa, and it tells me how many days are left to do it. Um, okay, so that's the preseason game. I'm going. No, I did it. I did it. I did it this way, and it did the same thing.
That's the other thing. They got to make it easy for people to get tickets and find.
No, I've never had this kind of trouble, and it seems to be the same problem over and over again. I know that they just recently they're okay. So yeah, July 16th, and I'll try here. I'm trying it in the schedule now,
Okay.
and it says Toronto at Ottawa. Get tickets. My
So like
goodness.
that's where
How about you? Did you try? Did you see it? Pretend you want to buy a ticket.
I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, pretend
Um,
you want to buy a ticket. You tell me what happens to you.
Frank, have you've gone to see games on the road? Like,
Yeah.
have you done? I don't know. Have you done the touchdown Atlantic or the
No,
Moncton?
no, I haven't done that. I haven't done that one. I've gone to Regina, I've gone to Edmonton, I've gone to Calgary, I've gone to Ottawa, I've gone to Montreal, I've gone to Hamilton, which is easy. I haven't gone to BC. I haven't gone to Winnipeg.
Okay. So I know for a fact the Argos haven't sold single tickets yet.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess they're gonna make that a season ticket package, and yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah, I don't know if those tickets are on sale yet. They might not be on sale yet. I know that there
Well,
was
if they announced it, they should be.
they announced it, but I don't think they've put the ticket. CFL hasn't started selling ticket yet, and that's another problem. Sorry, I just hit my hand on the desk. You know what? Not everybody can afford or wants to put the commitment to going to all 9 games. where is the flex ticket packages? Where is the single game
They're
pack?
there. They're there. You can get those.
But you can't buy them yet. I actually just tried buying a single game ticket for the Argonauts, and it says coming
There's
soon.
flex packs though. Like you
Uh,
said, there's the flex packs. Here.
yeah, flex
It
pack
brought me.
available soon.
Oh, I'm
Ha-
looking at. I'm now at Saskatchewan
yeah,
for some reason.
you can't buy the Argos tickets right now. You can only secure season tickets.
Yeah, I hear you.
I
There's
understand you want to get the commitment from Mona.
flex packs available soon. Single game tickets available soon.
Guess what? Everybody's going and buying Jays tickets right now. They're doing their concert tickets right now. They're not thinking about CFL games right now because you can't even buy them.
Yeah, this is.
It's I know we're in March but the season, Frank, starts in May. End of May. Like we're not talking about a July start
There's
here.
only 1 month in between. It's called April,
Are we kidding right
and
now?
we're in the last month before the season.
And you
It's
can't buy
crawling
a
on us
single game
this
ticket.
weekend.
If I want to go to the home opener, just the home opener, I can't get a ticket right now because they're not available. It says coming soon.
Wow.
TikTok, like I don't know. Like that's I know what I've sometimes I get a little, I wouldn't say annoyed, but I see the constant messaging from fans saying they're annoyed about the
I know that Mike
tickets.
Hogan and company are working hard. You
They
know,
are,
I know they're
but it
working
takes
hard, and
nothing. It takes
it must
nothing to
be
be a single.
if we're frustrated,
Imagine how they are. Yes,
right?
but single game tickets, that's an easy, here, buy your tickets, what you want. I guess what they're trying to do is they're trying to get as many of the season seats done so then they know what's available for single tickets.
Absolutely.
But oh, that's frustrating. That is definitely frustrating.
It is what it is. What I want to say now is we only got a couple of minutes left. Congratulations to the other football team, well, the one in Canada that just won a game at BMO Field where the Argos play, and that victory 4-0 led to them making it to the World Cup for the first time since 1986.
I I was working, so I was very much in tune with the game and covering that game. And you had a feeling this was going to be a possibility in like November. Like it just really started to sink in then. And then it happens, and you're just like, wow. In my lifetime, I've never thought that Canada would go to the World Cup in soccer. And it's not like they barely got in. It's not that
Well,
they barely got in. They got in, and other teams in their division are still fighting.
yeah, they're the
Also,
first to get in.
as an Italian, to
And
see Italy get eliminated by North Macedonia, I'm just gonna get that out there now, just before I'm not gonna throw my mic. But to see that happen, and then a few days later, Canada make it. Bravo, Canada. Bravo. Bravo. They
and
deserve it.
this weekend we're going to find out where they play, what group they'll be in. And I got to say, you know, the excitement at BMO Field, the pride, the Canadian pride, it's the kind of stuff that we look at as people who cover the Canadian Football League look at enviously. I do. I truly look at it enviously. I wish that was the case for the games that the Argos play in BMO Field. It hopefully they'll start basically get the rhythm going. The Canadian team, nobody cared about the Canadian team just a short time ago, and now everybody cares about it. Winning does matter, David. People say it doesn't, but it does. And the better you win, if that's a possibility, the more interest there is. And pride is about winning. There's a lot of pride in winning. And the Argos last year had a great season. It kind of went sideways in the final home game, which was the game before the Grey Cup.
And
We'll
imagining
see.
something that's sustainable too. Like this
Yeah.
Canadian squad isn't a one and done.
No. And I don't think the Argos are a one and done either. I think they'll do a good job. Um, Here's hoping that it works out well for them. Well, David, it was a lot of fun today.
Thank you again, Frank.
All right. For my buddy there, David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk Aaron Live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. Until next time.